the students, but if not, I will teach you how to draw in Tic-Tac-Toe. So, Tic-Tac-Toe is a beautiful game. Now, when you think about Tic-Tac-Toe, just so we're all on the same page, you start off with a board like this, and you alternate placing X's and O's. Whoever gets 3 in a row first wins, and a row is considered either horizontally, vertically, or diagonally. So if you think about it, how many different games of Tic-Tac-Toe are there? So again, well, to me that's the first natural question to ask. Or maybe not. What would you consider the first natural question?
How many different ways can you win?
How many different ways can you win? What else?
What's the best place to start?
What's the best place to start? Related to that, does the first person have a winning strategy? Does the second person have a winning strategy? Can you prove very easily that if the first person plays intelligently, there's no way the second person can win? So let me know if the following seems like a reasonable proof. Imagine the second person has a winning strategy. What if the first person then just throws away and just puts their first move down at random and considers themselves now the second person, except now you have a board with an extra square filled in by the first person. If the second person had a winning strategy, would that allow the first person to use it? There is a little bit of an asymmetry that there's now an extra square filled in on the board. So as a homework problem, think if that argument can be made rigorous and prove whether or not the second person has a winning strategy. And if so, could the first person somehow latch onto that strategy by just doing a meaningless move? As an aside, there are 2 versions of Tic-Tac-Toe that I find interesting. This is not one of them. How many of you have ever seen Gobble Tic-Tac-Toe? So in Gobble Tic-Tac-Toe, you have 3 types of pieces. You have 2 large, 2 medium, and 2 small. And on your turn, you can place down a piece, or you can place a piece over a piece. So large can gobble up medium and small can gobble up small can gobble up nothing. And you can gobble up your own piece. And there are times when it's strategically imperative for you to gobble up your own piece. And so this is a really nice twist on the game. They sell these sets online. It's probably about $20, $25 to buy a set like this. And it's a nice twist on the game as to what is the strategy now? Is there still an optimal move for the first person? The other version of Tic-Tac-Toe I know that I find interesting, and again, if you're looking for something to do with advanced students, once they've mastered Tic-Tac-Toe, here's something else to try. Tic-Tac-Toe with bidding. So each person starts off with, it doesn't matter, but let's say $1,000. And you have an auction, and you write down on a piece of paper how much the first move is worth to you. You write it down secretly, and then you open it up, and whoever wrote down a large number gets the first move. And there are 2 ways you can play. Maybe I bet, I put down $300, you put down $200. So I go down to $700 now, and I get the first move. In one version, the $300 just goes to the bank. In the other version, it goes to the other person. And of course, it makes a huge difference whether or not the money goes to the other person. In this game, what is your strategy now? So I really like stuff like this that takes something you know and puts a new tweak, a new perspective on it. So the students who've seen Tic-Tac-Toe all their lives, it's not clear. Do you want to go first? Do you want to have that winning bid? If you can get the winning bid for $1, probably. For $600? Probably not. So imagine you get that first move for $600. So you go down to $400. Let's do a little bit more extreme. Let's say you bet $800, because you really think that center is important. So you bet $200, you win, you get the first move, and the other person has $1,800. What do you think that person can do now?
Depends on what you put up for auction.
So now we have the second move. How much should the person bet for the second move?
201.
One possibility is 201. I might even gamble a little bit, bet $100. Your goal is to get 3 moves in a row, to get 3 squares in a row. If this person wants to bet a lot of money for a second move, that's fine. I'll then have less money for them. So maybe I would bet at most $100. And we'll say all ties are won by the first person. So let's say the first person wins. And they've had to spend $101. They would have $99, and I would still have $1,800. I can now basically just give myself the next 3 moves. And so I could bet $101 and I get the next move. So 101 would now put this person at 200. And I'd bet $201 and this person would get up to 401. And I would still have enough money to get that third move in a row. You could probably do it safely by betting $201 here. I haven't done the calculation. But it becomes a very interesting strategy as to you bet that first move, that center is worth a lot, but if you pay too much for it, you then hurt yourself later down the road. And so for me, things like this are always interesting in terms of connection to what is locally best versus what is globally best. Locally, it's best to get the center. It's best to be putting something on the board. But you don't want to do that at the cost of things further down the road. And so I will put over here a note, do dogs know calculus, which has a really another beautiful example of locally best versus globally best. So let's go back to the standard game of tic-tac-toe. You've got 2 fun variants that you can play with your students, or that they can play with each other. So some of the questions we've had is, how many games are there? What's the best first move? Do either players have a winning strategy? And so the question is how to analyze this. So can somebody naively tell me a way to estimate how many games there could be? I don't care if your estimate is over or under, just tell me which.
Yeah.
9 factorial. So at most, 9 factorial equals 9 times 8 dot 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 times 2 times 1 games. And you get that by saying, well, there's 9 choices for the first move, 8 choices for the second, 7 choices for the third. Why is this an overestimate? One reason is symmetry, and we'll talk about that in a second, but it's more than just symmetry.
There's choice. Oh, you're talking numbers.
Numbers.
When the other person goes, that eliminates more options for you.
Let's stop playing the game. X, O, X, O, X, O, X, O, X. Would we ever have that sequence of moves? No.
Because the game ends.
The game ends.
It could end.
So the 9 factorial is an overestimate, because frequently when we're doing that 9 factorial, we'll have 3 in a row at some point. And so once we've hit those 3 in a row, the game is over. You're welcome to join us if you want. So it's more than 1, less than 9 factorial. So we've got to figure out how many ways there are to play the game. If you've thought about baseball, best of 7 series. So right now the Broncos, I think, wish that the Super Bowl structure was more like Major League Baseball, where it's not one game, winner takes all. How many ways can you have a best of 7 series? We can have the series end in 4 games, 5 games, 6 games, 7 games. And so you would want to calculate how many ways can I have baseball end in 4 games. So how many best of 7 series? So how many ways can we have it in 4 games?
Two.
I'd say 2. Either the team you care about always wins or always loses. So 2 wins. In 5. And then you have to double it. So you have 2. So for 5 games, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The team you care about has to win the last game. And they have to have one loss in the first 4. So there are 4 ways to choose where they get their loss. And then I can do it from the other perspective. So there's 8 ways here. And I'll leave it for you to figure out 6 games and 7 games. As an aside, there was at least 1 or 2 people who teach statistics. Okay, so do you teach students how easy it is to lie with statistics? Here's one of my favorite examples. And just, since we're talking here, this is a great opportunity for this aside. Team has won 3 of last 4. Is this what we do? Yeah. How do you think the team's doing?
Could be tied.
Well, do you think the team is do you think this is a good team? Do you think the team is playing well or not? What's the winning percentage? 75 or 750. Average winning percentage is 500. Does it sound like this is a good team? So let's look at their games. So this is game 1, game 2. We're going backwards in time. Time backwards. Backwards, I think ends with D. Okay. So I tell you, they've won 3 out of their last 4. So in these teams over here, we have to have 3 wins and a loss. Where did the loss not go?
Four.
4.
4.
They didn't lose game 4.
Right.
Why didn't they lose game 4?
Because then they have a 3 game.
We would have said the team has won 3 in a row. So when you choose to present it as the team has won 3 out of 4, you want to present the team in as favorable light as possible. We know the loss is not here. So we know this has to be a win. Right? What else do we know?
There's 2 other ones.
There's 2 wins in here and a loss in here. We have no idea what happened over here. I don't know where those 2 wins and a loss could be. But there is one other fact we know.
5 is a loss.
5 is a loss. Why is 5 a loss?
We would have said 4 of the last 5.
I would have said 4 of the last 5, or I would have gone back as far as I could. So when I say they've won 3 out of 4, I could also be saying they've won 2 out of the last 3. Well, you got to win either 2 or 1 or 0 or 3. 2 out of 3 is not nearly as impressive. Or they've won 3 out of 5, which is a 600 team. So it's really easy to slant the information in terms of how you present it and how people process it. So it's a nice connection over here with just the different games. But let's go back to tic-tac-toe. So there's at most 9 factorial ways. And so there was a great comment that in some sense we don't care how many games there are, we care about how many games there are up to symmetry. And this is the key concept to try to introduce to students. How many opening moves are there in tic-tac-toe? So one perspective, there's 9 squares, there's 9 opening moves. But in some sense, I claim there's far fewer than 9 opening moves. How many opening moves are there? 3. Really, just 3 opening moves. Yep. So the corners, you can all call 1. The sides, you can all call 2. And the center is 3. So there's really only 3 first moves in tic-tac-toe. How many second moves are there? Well, now, you want to break into cases. This case, and this case. And again, this is all available online. If you just Google your number of games of tic-tac-toe, you should be able to find something like this. And as we were talking about a few moments ago with Legos, one of the nice things about this is you can talk about some of the biological implications of symmetry. If you take the mirror image of some compounds, it will kill you. And so in some sense, in the real world, if I flip things, it's not necessarily the same. But from a mathematical analysis, it doesn't matter which corner I go to. I can always rotate the board, I can flip the board. These things don't really matter. So when I'm on the playground, there's 3 opening moves. How many responses are there in this case? Why 3?
Because you can go to another corner.
Okay, so corner would be, wait, okay, all 3 corners the same?
No. Oh, no, two. That would count as 2.
So that would count as 2.
Okay.
So let's go here. Those would be the first, second, third, fourth, and fifth. Over here, how many responses are there? I would say these would be 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And now this one is much better. How many responses are there to this? 2. So there's 2 here, 5 here, and 5 here. So after just 2 rounds of analysis, there's 12 possible moves. If we do the 9 times 8, that's 72 possible moves. That's a huge gain. It's a factor of 6 gain, right? So, did someone close the door? So, by doing an analysis like this, we've reduced by a factor of 6 how many possibilities we have to consider after just 2 levels. And of course, you can keep playing. Now, if you happen to find yourself on the elementary school playground with the cocky kids who are challenging you, let them go first. And if they go first, where are they going to go? Almost always they will go in the middle. So what that means is you only have to figure out how to really respond to this. It's very unlikely an elementary school kid will go like this. You should still, of course, prepare for that possibility, but most of the time, they will take the center. So do you want to respond with the middle or with a corner?
Doesn't matter.
Well, let's see. So if you take the middle over there, all we have to do is we have to do enough of an analysis to prove that this is not a good choice. So my question is, can I always force you to go in a certain way? And so if I go over here, and of course I could have also, there's lots of different ways to do this. This is going to force you to go over here to stop me. And what is important to notice about a strategy like this is it forces you to stop me in such a way that your pieces are not helping each other get 3 in a row. But my 2 pieces here, not only can they get 3 in a row this way, but then where's the natural point for me to go on my next turn? Bottom corner. And these pieces are now aligned for me to attack in 2 different directions. So you do not want to respond with the middle. So if somebody goes in the center, you always respond with an edge. So almost all games on the playground should unfold this way if you are playing optimally. At this point, how many responses does the kid have? So how many moves does X have? 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So really, most of the time, you are safe in immediately moving to 4 games to analyze a tic-tac-toe. Are there any games that you think are not likely to happen? Which of these 4 moves do you think is not going to happen? 4. All right. If X is putting itself over there, it's aligning itself, you can now all of a sudden control the game. So you're probably not going to have to worry about somebody going in the corner. So again, I will leave the rest of this analysis, as a fun exercise for you guys to play with. But this is a great way of how to analyze something like tic-tac-toe. And at the end of the day, ask your students to try to figure out how many games there are. Now the question is, depending on how much your students know, you can start trying to introduce them to functions and to other questions. So we can generalize tic-tac-toe. I gave you 2 generalizations, but in some sense these are not natural generalizations of the problem. They're adding fundamentally new features. Right? They're adding money. They're adding pieces of different size. I want to take a game that's structurally similar to tic-tac-toe. Can you think of a generalization? Maybe it's easier or harder than tic-tac-toe. What would be an easier version of tic-tac-toe? How many of you play Sudokus?
No.
Or do Sudokus? My wife and my mother, and I don't mind if this is being recorded, they listen to this later, they both don't like how I do Sudokus. I wrote a program in Mathematica to do the algebra for me. And to me, the fun part of Sudokus is finding a Sudoku puzzle that my algorithm can't solve, which means there's a move I've missed. And so I have my computers doing all the brunt algebra for me. But there's more than one type of Sudoku. You know, the standard Sudoku is the 9x9 grid. Have you seen any other Sudokus? There's Sudokus that are 4x4. There are some that they have blocks. The Sudoku that's 4x4 has blocks that are 2x2. There are some that I think have blocks that are 2x3. There's lots of different sizes of Sudokus. We don't have to keep the tic-tac-toe board fixed as 3x3. What do you think would be a simpler game of tic-tac-toe to analyze? 2x2. Okay? So you could play the game tic-tac. Right? It would be very hard to find somebody to play you in tic-tac unless you let them go first. Okay? Does anybody have a winning strategy in tic-tac? Sorry, the board is so simple to why. Okay. Do you have to play intelligently if you go first? You can't help but win. Right? By symmetry, you only have one move if you go first. If the person responds here, you go either here or here, that's 2 in a row. If the person goes here, you can't help but win. Okay? Tic-tac is very easy to analyze. There is, however, a game that's easier to analyze than tic-tac. Tic, right? Tic is very easy, and in fact, you don't even need to find a second person. Okay? But go backwards. I mean, this is something that's not emphasized nearly enough in my mind. Is take something you know, take the problem, and look for generalizations. Look for simple cases. Where did it come from? You want to get people excited about playing tic-tac? Not going to happen. What else could you do? So we're not going to get people to play tic-tac or tick.
Make it bigger.
Yeah. You have to find some other 3-letter T word. So what should it be? Tic-Tac-Toe-Toc. Oh. So we can expand it out to Tic-Tac-Toe-Toc. And so now we have a 3x3 board. I'm sorry, we have a 4x4 board. And then there could be some interesting differences between this and the 3x3 case. What's the most interesting difference you notice? There's no center square. So all of a sudden, when you're trying to analyze these generalizations of the game, it's very different in higher dimensions, depending on whether or not it's even or odd. So you got Patty, yes?
Would this be similar to like Connect 4? Would you?
So it'd be very similar to Connect 4. And in fact, that was the other thing I was thinking about in my mind, is Connect 4 is trying to get 4 in a row. Now the difference between Connect 4 and Connect 4 has a bigger grid. And so one possibility is you could actually have an infinite grid and say the goal is to get 3 in a row, or 4 in a row, or 5 in a row. And Connect 4, you can't put a piece in an arbitrary location. You can only put a piece on top of another piece. So one set of generalizations of tic-tac-toe is to consider the n by n grid, n by n, and in a row. Another possibility, is to consider an infinite by infinite grid. And so the game can go on forever, it goes off in all directions, and your goal is to get 3 in a row, 4 in a row, 5 in a row, whatever you agree upon. So now, all of a sudden, imagine you're playing tic-tac-toe, but there's no boundaries. So no boundaries. How many first moves are there? No. So yes, there are infinitely many first moves, but if the grid is infinite by infinite, really, how many first moves are there? One. There's only one first move. How many responses are there? Infinite, good. It's not 2. So, 1, 2, and then there's the moronic things. You start to get farther and farther away. Especially if you're playing 3 in a row. If you're playing 3 in a row, it feels wrong not to go next to X. And so, this is a great thing to ask students to try to develop. What do you think the theory would be of tic-tac-toe in a 4x4? How many games are there? Is there a winning strategy? How would we find it? What if we had an infinite by infinite grid? How many in a row do we need to have for the game to be interesting? Do you think 3 in a row and an infinite by infinite grid would be interesting? I will take on the entire class right now, if you let me go first. I will admit, I have not thought about this directly, although I've played analogs of this with my kids. Where do you guys want to go? All I have to do is I have to get 3 in a row.
Look somewhere 2 away from me. Would that make sense?
So you want to go
Anywhere in that.
not touching her?
What?
So do you want to be touching me or not touching?
I want to be touching.
If you're not
Oh,
touching
you're
me,
not touching,
I don't have
you
cooties.
can just get 2 in a row anyway.
See, once I have 2 in a row, if I'm trying to get 3 in a row, I can go in 2 different directions. So if you don't block me, this is not a proof. And you can talk to us about why you need proofs now. Is it seems likely that if you don't touch me, you haven't stopped any of my possible paths. It seems like it's a wasted move. And so, let's say you go here for simplicity. Where should I go?
Where above it or...
Yeah.
or-
Here's fine, here's fine, here's fine, here's fine, here's fine. As long as I touch, I'm fine. I could even go here. You could go here, and I could, toy with you for a while before beating you. But you're in a situation like that, and if you'd gone here instead, again, it's no problem. So playing tic-tac-toe, 3 in a row on an infinite board, it's not fair to the second person. What about 4 in a row? What could you do to make the game fairer to the person who goes second?
Give them 2 moves.
So one possibility is give them 2 moves. Fine, you go first, I get moves 2 and 3. What else could you do?
Limit where
Yeah,
X
limit
goes.
limit the direction.
So you can't really limit X's first move.
No, second.
So you could limit X's second move. How many of you ever played the game Risk?
Yeah.
So, yeah, so
Long time.
my feeling is the rules of Risk are horrible for whoever's going second. There's just too much of an advantage, especially in 2-person games. And so we often have these restrictions as to how many attacks can you do as the first person. Yes?
So there's this game that I found it at my parents' house a while ago called Pente. I don't know if anybody knows it.
No.
So it's a fairly sizable board. I don't actually know the dimensions. I counted at one point, but I forgot. And you have to get, obviously, Pente. It's 5 in a row. But there's a little wrinkle. You can also actually get win by capturing. So I can manage.
Sure.
So you can capture 5 pairs of the opposite team. So it's a little stones. Stones of different
Okay.
colors, the same kind of thing. So like if these were here, you could actually capture by surrounding, and you capture their 2 stones and remove them from the board. So that's a way I think
It's
to
kind of
also.
like Othello,
I
except
love-
you're moving.
Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah, maybe so. I can't remember. that
Othello,
name,
you flip
but-
the color, so you
Oh, so
surround
take
it.
the-
But it's
So
the same
you
point,
can
you
either
flip back later.
So you have to be mindful of the 5 in a row, but you also have to be mindful of the
Yeah.
pairs. That's sort of a twist.
Yeah.
mathematically.
But I mean, this is a great thing then to ask students, is to have them be creative. have them come up with a new system and analyze it. Another thing you could do is we could have the infinite by infinite grid, but maybe, so the camera just stop
Where
right
you
here.
go on the last point. You can't tell you go on the last point.